Hi, good evening, all of you. Hope you are able to see me. You are able to view the screen. Hi, good evening, all of you. Hope you are able to get what I am telling you. Hope you are able to listen it. Hi, good evening, all of you. Please confirm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your kind confirmation. And now let us understand about our today's topic on good warehouse practices. Why I have selected this topic? Because there are a lot of regulatory expectation with respect to the warehouse, production, audits, laboratory, and all. So that is the reason I thought that let us have a training or the discussion on the each aspects of the regulatory requirements, or you can say the regulatory expectations with respect to the good warehouses practices, good laboratory practices, good engineering practices, good auditing practices, good reviewing practices, good, you can say, manufacturing practices. Lot of things are there, lot of good practices are there, good investigation practices, lot of practices are there. So today's discussion I purposely took this on the basis of good warehouse practices as a start of our this complete, you can say, the seminar range, or you can say the first session of the good warehouse practices as a start of the complete uh, program on good practices by the regulatory expectations. So why I have considered this good warehouse practices, because always remember that any audit, it starts from warehouse and then it goes away. 99% of the audits are starting from the warehouse. So always remember that first impression is a long lasting impression. And hence, I am always focusing when I am preparing for the audits and all, I am always focusing on the warehouses. And that is the reason today we are going to discuss about the good warehouse practices. Let me tell you one thing here is, many people think that warehouse practices is very simple and just in a small time we can discuss. But when I prepare composite of all the different guidelines, even I displayed here only US FDA, PICS, WHO, EU, and all. But I referred, other than that, I referred a lot of guidelines like NVISA, TGA, and other guidelines also. The point is, when I evaluated all the guidelines, I come to know that the maximum crunch is available or maximum requirement is available in the WHO and of course the US FDA. And detailed one also it is available in the UGMP. But the point is, the UGMP and the PICS are very similar, and most of the U points or requirements are covered under WHO. So, however, I have prepared all these training discussions on the basis of different guidelines, and then I come to know that in one session it cannot be complete. So, I make this training in a two sessions. So, today we are going to discuss this training on session one of the good warehouse practices, followed by, after some days or maybe by next week, we will have the training on the uh, good warehouse practices on a second session, or you can say the last session. And after that, we will have the other training sessions on the good practices with respect to all the different aspects like engineering, good practices in auditing, good practices in laboratory, good practices in production, and all the things. Okay, so this is just a short introduction about today's topic, and this is the agenda of our today's training program. So what we will discuss, we will just we have some introduction about the topic, and then we will have the introduction about trainer. Then we will understand the different guideline requirements like EU, GMP, FDA, WHO, PICS, and all. What are the common regulatory requirements or expectations that we will discuss, followed by general requirements about the warehouse practices. So, what are the general requirements as per the US FDA or the other guidelines or WHO guideline? That we will discuss. That what are the general requirements, followed by, while material receipt, what are the requirements or what are the expectations of the guidelines? So, about when we are receiving any material, so that we will discuss. We will further discuss about the expectation on the material storage, and followed by what are the regulatory requirements with respect to the material stock rotation, material stock movement, material stock checking, that all we will discuss. Then we will further discuss about the special attention with respect to the packaging material, and specifically in that we want to emphasize on the primary and the printed packaging material. So that way we will discuss, and then followed by we will have the question and answers and vote of thanks. So before moving ahead, I just want to tell you here one thing, that during your discussion or our discussion, if you have any questions, or if you have any queries, you can write your questions in the chat box. What I will do, I will revert in the chat box itself, because what happened when I am reverting in the during the training itself, so what happened, the training content becomes so long and many people lose the training. So that is the reason what I thought, okay, I will only discuss focusing on the topic, and after that the questions you can type it, you can send it in the chat box, and I will revert on the chat box only, so that other people also can read, and it will be long lasting, so many people can even read whatever they are about, whatever they have the requirement about any questions, or whatever they want some any clarification, they can go through that. So please note that what I'm telling you, please put your questions in the chat box or discussion chat. I will revert there itself with my answers. Okay. So let us start our today's discussion. Before discussion, as we discussed that we need to discuss about the information about the trainer. So my name is Jitendra Kumar Shah. I am a CGMP compliance consultant, trainer, and auditor from NADH plus GXP compliance services, and I am having more than 21 years of experience. This is a brief CV about me. You can why I am showing this CV, because if you are considering this as a official training for your organization, that also can be helpful for you. So I was the quality head, means composite of quality control and quality assurance head for more than 13 years. I have faced USFDA for it is mentioned 5 times. I think it is more than thing, and UGMP again more than about 7 to 8 times I faced. I am having QC background also. I have audited more than 500 vendors and trained more than 5,000 candidates. And I am the member of American Society for Quality and Indian Pharmaceutical Association. My previous work experience includes, I started my career with Sun Pharma. Then I work in Blue Cross Laboratories, Alembic, Sanofi, USV, Mylan, AstraZeneca, and Zydus Cadila. So this is a short introduction about me. I don't want to put more and more focus here. And just before start, just a fraction of minute, I just want to put a disclaimer here that whatever this video is prepared, it is based on some work evaluation, research, case studies gathered from different guidelines, books, internet, and all. So the basic purpose of this training is for the education purpose only. Okay, so please understand this concern with respect to disclaimer. And second thing, there may be possibility to revise any guideline in future, so please refer the current guideline requirement before implementation of any requirement. This is my sincere request to all of you. And with this, now let us start our today's discussion on good warehouse practices, session 1. So just to start, I just want to display a guideline. There is a specific WHO guide, which is a guide for good storage practices. So that is what the WHO guide. Then of course 21 CFR part 211 for material management, it is a special subclass is there. As per EU also there is a guide requirement. Then EU and PICS are, already I told that both are similar, more contents are most of the similar, so it is also compliant to the PICS requirement. And wherever there will be specific requirement of some guidelines, I will touch upon that requirements to you. Please be patient and be attentive, because this is very important topic and many people miss to focus on this. So let us start with some general requirements about the good warehouse practices. At each storage site, there should be adequate number of qualified personnel to achieve pharmaceutical quality assurance objectives. This is whatever I am going to discuss today's discussion. It is not from my point of view. Again, I am telling you, it is exactly from the guideline. Okay. National regulations on qualifications should be followed. Why this is why I'm speaking specifically this general requirement, because many people in warehouse or many companies, they think that, oh, pharmacy candidate should be there for warehouse, or any commerce background person should have been in the warehouse and all. So we need to comply the national regulations on qualifications what are required. All personnel should receive proper training in relation to good storage practice, regulations, procedures, and of course safety. So all the people who are working in the warehouse or the storage area should have good storage practices. That is what the content of this good storage practices will be in our next course of discussion. Regulations, what are the regulatory requirements? Procedures, what are the SOPs the warehouse department is having? And of course, safety related training they should have. That is what the requirement with respect to the general information. And the next general information is with respect to the training. So expectation is what? All the staff should be trained in and observe high level of personal hygiene and sanitation. The point is, whatever the expectation with respect to the health and sanitation and hygiene, same expectations are, you can say same expectations are from the warehouse. So it is not like that ki any department working in the facility is exempted from these common requirements. Of course, the gowning is very, very important. So the second point is with respect to the gowning. Personnel employed in storage area should wear suitable protective or working garments appropriate for the activities they perform. Now, what I mean by appropriate again, I just want to emphasize here. If the personnel are working in the area where they are in the warehouse where they are going to do the dispensing or material issuance operation, so they have to wear full body covering so that the material will should not be contaminated by the during the operation. And if they are working in the warehouse, so they should ensure that the material or they should not be contaminated, or while handling they should not contaminate the area. So contaminate means not only with respect to the other materials but also contamination with respect to the overall aspects. This is what is the expectation. So you need to be very, very careful when you are evaluating this requirement. And preferably in many organizations I have seen that in the warehouse they wear only the apron. The point is, preferably I suggest all the companies that we should not use the street clothes when working in the any pharmaceutical organization. Precautions must be taken to prevent unauthorized persons from entering in the storage area. So either the storage area should be always under lock and key, and there should be the list of authorized persons who are going to enter or who have access to the warehouse, or you can have the biometrics so that you can control the persons, and only the authorized persons can enter into the storage area. Storage area should be of sufficient capacity to allow the orderly storage of the various categories of materials and products. For example, starting material, packaging materials, and all the type of materials. Now here again I am using the wording sufficient capacity to allow the orderly storage of the various categories of the material. What is meant by that? This means that the stores used for whatever type of material, maybe raw material, maybe packaging material, maybe bulk, maybe finished product, whatever. I don't mind. The point is there should be sufficient space. Now, this is the common problem for all the organizations, that they are not having. They always, if you ask that in the warehouse in charge or warehouse people that do you have the sufficient space in your department or in your area, so the answer you will get it as no, we don't have the sufficient space in my warehouse area. You, that type of answer you will get it. The point is, if you don't have the sufficient space, then you should make an arrangement about some racks. You make a use of some racks, or you can make a use of some alternative provisions. But the point is, you should have sufficient capacity to allow storage of orderly storage of various categories of the material. So, and it should be no specific order or specific fashion. Means separate area for raw material, separate for packaging material, separate for rejected, separate for release, separate for quarantine, separate for return or recalled. All, the separate systematic orderly storage is what expected. This is the simple basic requirement, but let me tell you one thing, that a simple requirement, but still many companies are getting this observation from this requirement. The next requirement is with respect to the cleaning. Storage area should be clean and free from accumulated waste and vermin. That is a simple requirement, no need to much discuss here. There should be appropriate procedure for the cleanup of any spillage or ensure complete removal of any risk of contamination. What is meant by this? There should be appropriate procedure for the cleanup or any spillage. That means the warehouse department should have a spillage kit or spillage controlling kit, because this becomes a very important requirement when if you are engaged in the manufacturing of some retroviral drugs or hormones or some beta lactams. So the point is, if there is any spillage, the spillage should not contaminate, so immediately you should have some kit so that the spillage can be taken care of. So this is a very important point. So that is the reason I have collated all the different requirements from different guidelines, so that you will get all the composite points in a single go. Hope you're getting my point. So with respect to sanitation, it's very clear that you should have some sanitation program or sanitation SOP, that how you are going to sanitize the area, where you will have the cleaning frequency, what type of disinfectants you are using, what type, how many times you are cleaning, that all complete SOP should be followed. And of course, the second point with respect to the pest control, yes, you should have the pest control program. Then of course, but inside you should not spray the pesticides or insecticides. Yes, if they are harmful, if they are proved to be not harmful to the product, then you can consider, but still I recommend that chemicals or other chemicals should not be sprayed in the warehouse area. You can see from the picture that you can do the pest control activity outside the area. But yes, inside, for controlling the pest or insect, you can use the insectocutor or insectocatcher. Preferably, I recommend in that also you go for the insectocatcher rather than insectocutor, because insectocutor, what happened, insectocutor kills the insects, and it may possibility that it may disperse some the dead and decaying material of the insects. But the insect catchers are like that, they got stuck to the glue pad, and so there will not be any uh, proliferation, or you can say the small parts may be stuck there itself. So insects will completely stuck there, and they will not able to contaminate further the area. So that is what my personal apprehension. But the point is, you should have the pest control program, defined frequency. Pest control activity should not be done inside, and you can do pest control activity outside by using some pesticides. And of course, everything should be recorded. That is the underlying statement. That is not the no much you can say the required to discuss. But the point is, inside you can have some insectocutor or insectocatcher. That is what the point I want to discuss here with respect to the sorry with respect to the insect control or the pest control. Now I just want to tell you that the basic requirement for any warehouse or any storage area is very clear. Material should be handled and distributed as per the GMP and specified in the document, specified in the maybe batch record, specified in the SOP and all like that. And second, very important is, whenever we are handling the materials, then material means all type of materials, maybe raw material, maybe packaging materials, maybe the pharmaceutical products, because finished product is also handled by warehouse. You're getting my point. So this training is not only for the people or the companies for raw material storage warehouse, but this holistically is applicable for all the storage areas. So that is the reason where we are handling material or pharmaceutical product. our basic important expectation, or you can say the requirement, is we should always take care that it should be protected from any mix up or cross contamination. That way we have to put more and more efforts, and our efforts should be with respect to this. Very clear statement, but very important and very clear statement. So I am just emphasizing on this statement. Hope you are getting my point. If you have any questions, so please write your questions in the chat box. I will revert to you on the chat box itself. I will not revert while speaking and explaining in the during the session. Now you can find that under this slide. Hope this slide is visible to you. On the bottom side, I have mentioned some dollar sign and something I have mentioned here, because this is a clause and that is a reference to the FDA. So US FDA requirement. So that is what I am putting here. So what is the US FDA requirement? Very clear. Words are very clear. There should be written procedure for, and the written procedure should be in a detail, not only short. What type of SOPs you need to have? You need to have the SOP, or you can say the detailed SOP for receipt, identification, storage, handling, sampling, testing, approval or rejections. That all SOPs you should have in writing. And last word is very important. All these SOPs should be followed. The point is, if suppose it is mentioned in your SOP and if it is not followed, so you are likely to get the observation with respect to this requirement, that the SOP number so and so for material receipt or whatever storage is not followed, for example, and then all the informations will be written with respect to the observations in 483. So the requirement is very simple, but it has to be followed. This is very important, and whenever you refer any FDA guideline, there will be always remember there will be written that written procedures shall be followed. So please remember this word, and if we don't follow this SOP, we are likely to get the observation that the SOPs are not followed. Hope you are getting my point. The next requirement from US FDA is upon receipt and before acceptance of the material, we should examine visually for appropriate labeling. So whatever the material I am receiving, I have to check it visually whether I am getting the correct material or not. भैया सही मटेरियल है या नहीं है, प्रॉपर मटेरियल है या नहीं है, या कुछ गलत मटेरियल है, दैट आई हैव टू चेक इट with respect to label. Second, container damage or not. Container is good, intact or damaged. And very important is, if it is having a seal, of course each material container should have seal. That seal should be intact. If that seal is broken, then you need to be very careful. There may be possibility of contamination and all. So be careful if there are broken seal containers are there. You are getting my point, what I meant to say. This is very simple requirement, but very important requirement. So, and this is exactly what it is expected from the FDA as per this clause. So upon receipt means after receipt, but before accepting. After receipt from the vendor, but before accepting, we have to visually check label, whether container is damaged or not, whether seal is broken or not, whether there is a possibility or evidence of some contamination or not. That we have to see on the containers. This is very important thing, because the point is, materials basically, all materials are specific in different colors. Okay, so the point is, the materials will have only white color, or some are maybe off-white color. The identification to the materials is only on the label. So that is the reason it is very important that whether the material is contaminated or not, that we have to verify before accepting. You are getting my point? It is very clear. I am emphasizing again and again slowly these points to make you understand in very clear language. And yes, this is a very important requirement. The point is, when I have seen while auditing, the raw material warehouses and finished goods warehouses. So they should have some canopy, so that receiving and dispatch bay should have some canopy, so that when the materials is received and when the container is open and they are transferring the material containers from vehicle to the storage area or raw material stores. So possibility that suppose there is a rainy season, so the rain will come and the material container gets spoiled or material container gets wet, or if there is a dusty, so dust will lot of dust, material will get lot of dust. So the point is, reception area should be designed and equipped to allow containers of incoming materials and product to be clean, and of course the bays, receipt bays and the dispatch bays should have some canopy or some protection from the weather. That is what the thing, expectation, or you can say the requirement, and that is also what before storage. See, the point is, GMP expects that, GMP starts from the material we are getting to the product, it is reaching to the patient. So here expectation is, while receiving, before storage, we should ensure these requirements in our warehouse. Many companies, they don't have the canopy and all, so they are having just a simple warehouse door, and when the material uh, vehicle while loading or unloading is there, so chances that the containers get wet and they may get the observation. So this is what I am just sharing to you, so please take care in your organization. Then once it is received, you should have the SOP or procedure for cleaning of the container with the cloth or duster, and cleaning with the vacuum cleaner. You need to have the air curtain, so that the outside dust should not be come along with the container. And there are many automated air tunnels are available, so from the air tunnel, when you pass the container gets automatically dedusted, as well as on the air, in the tunnel itself, there is a you can, the there is a load cell is applied, so automatically you will get the weight also of the container, so you need not required to take again the weight of the container, so automatically the gross weight also will be recorded while dedusting to the air tunnel. So this type of mechanisms are available, so that mechanisms you can very well use it. And this whatever is mentioned, curtains and air tunnels, this is mentioned in WHO guideline. So this I am not telling from my point of view, this is exactly from the WHO. So this is what the expectation of WHO. So WHO is very clear with respect to the this guideline requirements. So same thing now WHO is also expecting with respect to the after receipt and before acceptance, the incoming material should be checked with respect to the purchase order, whether each container is checked or not, label is okay or not, batch number, type of material, how much quantity, that all we have to verify as a part of our material receipt checklist, and it should be recorded, of course. And the if the the consignment is containing multiple batches, so we should generate the for, if suppose product is one product is received, but in we received in the one product, we received the two different batches or multiple batches, so for each batch we have to follow a different receipt, and we have to follow the different goods receipt, and accordingly we should consider each different batch as a each different product, and accordingly it that each should have the different procedure. Means my point is, what I meant to say, if uh, in a batch, if in a product, sorry, if in one product, if we are getting multiple batches, so what we should do, for each batch we should raise a separate goods receipt note. For each batch we should separately physically inspect the label and all. For each batch we should have a separate, you can say, the material checklist. So each of individual batch we should consider as a separate. That is what the expectations of a WHO behind this requirement. Okay, hope you're getting my point, what I meant to say. This is very important, so I am just putting more and more efforts to understand. Okay, the the next point is, um, all the containers when we are checking, they should have a expiry date or retest date. The point is the container should have the expiry date and retest date, and also it should not be in a shortcut or short form. The product name also should be in a proper way. Complete name, product name should be there. All the expiry date or retest date should be based on the, of course, the stability study. That is what the requirement, and as specified in the pharmacopoeia. And of course it is mentioned that unauthorized abbreviations, you know unauthorized abbreviations means, the many people use as shortcuts in writing the material name and way, this one like polyvinyl pyrrolidone, many people refer as PVP, like that. So authorized, so okay, in some cases it can be acceptable for PVP, but the point is in case of finished product, diluted isosorbide mononitrate, so DIMS something, DIMN something like that, the people will write. So this type of unauthorized abbreviations are not acceptable. So we should use the complete name, and the codes means, names, we should use the complete names, and if should be there on the material. Hope it's very simple requirement, but the point is important, very important point. So I am just emphasizing here. The next thing I just want to tell you with respect to the receipt of the material as per the regulatory expectation is damage. If the container is damaged, maybe found possible contaminant or tampered, or some damage is observed, then immediately we have to keep it as separate, keep it under separate area. It should not, it should be restricted from the use. That is what the point is. And immediately we have to initiate investigation, that why it is damaged, from where it is damaged, and all. We have to initiate the investigation. If any broken or damaged item is found, we have to keep it separate. The point is why we need to keep separate. We have to keep the separate so that it should not be inadvertently taken for further sampling or taken for further use. That is what the expectation. Now suppose if you cannot reject this container immediately, just now you can see in the slide, there is a rejected label is there. Okay, the point is there may possibility that immediately the warehouse in charge cannot reject the material, because the rejection label, they will require rejection label, and it has to be issued by quality unit and all. I agree with that, but the point is in such a case, the material should be kept in a separately, maybe in a quarantine, or you can put in some hold area as per your SOP. If you have any SOP, accordingly you have to follow. But if you are putting in the quarantine, please understand that it should not go in the under test area. That means what? Indirectly or directly, it should not be taken for the sampling purpose by the quality control. That is what you have to take care. Otherwise, what happen if the quality control person is taking the material for sampling? So by mistake, the quality control person will open this damaged container, and if this damaged container is contaminated, then what happen? The other containers also will get contaminated. You're getting my point? So this is the point I just want to discuss, and this is the WHO requirement. I am in between, I am telling you that these are the requirements of the specific guidelines, so you can just take care of these requirements. Now you need to have the clear-cut SOP that how you are going to handle the expired stock. This is very key thing, that if what happened, no, you may be having a lot of material in your warehouse, but suppose if the material got expired, what is your strategy? How you will handle that strategy, or that SOPs you should have. Then the second point is, these should adequately describe the storage procedures and define the route of materials and pharmaceutical products through the organizations in the event of product recall being required. Yeah, the point, I'm just reading because a lot of things are there in this training topic, and a lot of slides are there, so I need to just correlate the things. Now this point, what the expectation is, warehouse, I told you earlier that warehouse is not only for raw material and packaging material, but warehouse is for finished product also, and from that finished product warehouse, the material may be going outside. So the point is, if any expired stock is there or any records are there, you should maintain it properly so that in case of any product recall, you should have a complete record. That is what the expectation behind this requirement. Further, if you have any questions, you are free to put your questions in the discussion chat box or comment section. I will revert back to you. Okay. Further, with respect to the documentation, you can have any type of documentation. You can have paper-based document, but it should be in a permanent form. This is a word exactly from the guideline. Permanent form documentation should be there, written or electronic. Okay. With respect to each material which is stored in the warehouse, product indicating recommended storage conditions, precautions, retest date, these all records should be available in the warehouse. Of course, pharmacopoeia requirement, current the national requirements with respect to the labels and containers should be used followed at all the times. The point is, if you are suppose exporting the goods or finished product to the US, you should follow the labeling requirements required or expectation from the US authority. So that way you have to respect the country with respect to the labeling, and that type of labeling should be put on the container. And the second point is this all records with respect to the storage and what type of precautions while handling the material, that all should be the part of the label on the container, and this all information should be available in the warehouse. Hope it's clear. Any question? Please be openly please ask the questions. I will be happy to answer your all questions. Again, with respect to the records, the same requirement. There should have the clear cut record for each delivery. Each delivery means finished product delivery as well as the raw material. It should have the goods, quantity, quality, what is the quality of the goods, what is the how much quantity, supplier batch number, date of receipt, assigned batch number or internal batch number, or you can say the control number or analytical report number, whatever the internal company number, and the expiry date. You need to have the complete record of this materials, and that record, again I am telling, for raw material, for packaging material, as well as for finished product. And let me tell you, this record may be in a form of electronic, like in maybe in the SAP system or any ERP system, or maybe in a paper-based system. So complete composite record with respect to the nature of the goods, or you could say name of the material, quality, quantity, supplier, batch number, date of receipt, what is the internal batch number, or you can say the control number or analytical report number, and expiry date, a complete record. That is what the record we should maintain in the warehouse for each material which is being stored in the warehouse. Hope these requirements are very simple, but many why I am focusing again and again, because always audit starts with the warehouse. So we should give always a positive impression when the auditor is coming in the warehouse. So that is why I am again emphasizing on this topic. Comprehensive record should be maintained showing all receipt and issues of the material and pharmaceutical products according to specified system, for example by the batch number. So you can have the comprehensive records. For example, just now in the last slide we observed that material receipt and retest date and internal number record is there, correct? Now suppose 500 kg is there. Out of that 500 kg, suppose 25 kg is given for one batch. So there should be a comprehensive record with respect to the batch number. Yes, 25 kg has gone for batch number X, 50 kg is gone from this material to batch number Y, and that way the composite or comprehensive record should be there. So either these records should be with respect to the batch wise, or you can say with respect to the lot wise, or with respect to some consignment wise, it depends on different type of materials which are going to be manufactured. Okay, now let us discuss. Now this way we are discussing about some receipt of the materials, and now let us have the discussion on the storage of the materials. Again, the same requirement that whenever we are storing any material for and pharmaceutical products, we should ensure that the point is the containers what they're used for storage, they should not adversely affect on the quality of the product. So whatever the containers you are storing, maybe raw material, if you are getting it, the raw material will be packed in suppose polybag, maybe some raw material maybe in a black polybag, some raw material maybe in a white polybags, or they may be in a fiber drum, or they may be in a box. Okay, the point is, that packaging material should not be adversely affect to the quality of the material or the product. Because now how you can ensure, suppose if it is a finished product container, for finished product container, so then the packaging material will be of course ensured by your company only. But suppose if it is a raw material, then the packaging material will be evaluated by the supplier or the vendor. So the point is, you should take the supplier or stability data from the supplier or vendor, and you have to verify whether the stability of the material, when the stability of the material stability data, if you are reviewing, so there you can refer what is the packaging material used in the stability data. Same packing profile you should have in your warehouse. You're getting my point? Many times what happen, in the stability data of raw materials, the packaging profile will be different, and you will get the material of a different packing profile. For example, in the stability study stability data, or you can say the stability summary data of some material or API, you can say the packaging profile may be a double poly bag, and bags are packed in tri-laminated bags, and further they are packed in a cardboard box. This type of stability data, you can say this type of packaging profile may be specified in the stability data. But in reality, if you visit your warehouse area, you will come to know that the material is in the HDP container. There is no tri-laminated bags. So in such a case, you should communicate to the vendor or supplier key, my dear friend, this is a different packaging profile. Please share me stability data of this packaging profile in which I have received the material. You're getting my point, what I meant to say. And of course, the packaging material should be such that it should protect the material from outside outside environmental factors with respect to the, of course, temperature, humidity and all. But along with that, bacterial contamination or some dust, this all it should protect from the external environment. So that way the packaging profile, or you can say the packaging material, should be there, and it should protect the material. And of course, I already explained you with respect to the stability of the material. So please speak with your vendor and verify in your initial. I suggest you that if you have not evaluated this point till date, my request is to please check in your company, and uh, check in your company, and please speak to your warehouse in charge, and evaluate all the stability data before use. Hope my discussion is very clear. My words are very slow. I am speaking to make you understand. Now this is again the USFDA requirement. So I have put here USFDA clause. Components, drug product containers and closures shall be stored under quarantine until they have been tested or examined as appropriate and released. Simple requirement. It is already discussed. So I will not put much efforts here. Hope you got the point, because this is already discussed, right? Everything we discussed the same point, so no need to again discuss the same thing again. And let us discuss with respect to the point that whenever we are discussing with respect to the uh, components in USFDA language or 20% CFR language, components means all the input materials, and drug product containers and closures means the packaging materials. Shall be handled and stored in such a way to prevent contamination. Of course, bagged or boxed components of drug product containers or closures should be stored off the floor. This is C point is very clear here. I just want to touch upon this point. I want to further elaborate that when inspectors are checking that so this is the favorite questions of the inspector, that how you are cleaning the containers, how you are cleaning the racks, and always many people will face the problem. So the point is, the container should not be stored on the floor, they should be off the floor. So you should use suitable pellets so that you should able to clean the floor. And of course, there should be some space between two containers so that you will able to clean it properly. That is what the point. And it should permit cleaning and inspection. Means what? The container, one side there will be label, other side there may not be label. So you should keep the container, put the container in such a way that the labels are facing towards the person who is inspecting or who is checking. This is the simple thing. But why I'm discussing here, because this is a favorite question of many auditors: how you clean the pellet, or how you clean the container, or how you clean the rack. And many people get the observation for this. So that is the reason I am discussing this again and again. Okay. Yeah. One point again, what about the partial use container? What about? So we are discussing about what we discussed till time, we discuss about the receipt of the material. We are discussing about the storage of material now. So while receipt, we are discussing about some rejected and all, and receipt checklist, all the things we discussed. Okay. Remember? Now, while storage, what about the partial used containers? So when any container is partially used for dispensing, for example, 50 kg container is there, and out of that, suppose only 20 kg is given for batch manufacturing. So remaining 30 kg will be still in the container. So you have to reclose it properly, reseal it, so that it should be protected or prevented from any spillage or contamination. Because this 20 kg today we dispense may be a good quality, but due to the wrong storage at my warehouse area, it may lead to the it may spoil, and the remaining 30 kg may get contaminated, and automatically it may contaminate to my finished product also. So that way, partial use or partly used container should be sealed properly or closed properly. So you may be aware about that. You might have seen that many inspector will ask for the partial use container. Let me see that open, how it is there. So please don't open the container in the normal warehouse area. If the container has to be open, raw material container has to be open in the warehouse area, take that material in the dispensing or sampling booth under reverse laminar airflow, and there you can demonstrate the opening of the container. You're getting my point? And yes, then when you are dispensing for the next batch, you have to use that partial container, or you can say open container first, and then you should open the intact container. This is what the thing. The next is with respect to the storage condition. So the storage condition should be based on the displayed on the label with respect to temperature and humidity. So the point is, why we should follow the label displayed on the label information, because on the label is recommended, it is based on the stability perform at the vendor end or supplier end in case of the raw material. If it is a finished product, then stability, the label condition or storage condition will be based on stability conducted by our end if we are the drug product manufacturer. But if we are the if we are the drug product manufacturer, then in that case, in case of raw materials, we have to follow the storage condition as per recommended in the on the label, because the labels, they are putting the storage condition based on the stability data, and as per the storage condition we should store and we should monitor the temperature or RH as per the at least in the storage area. And one point with respect to this temperature and RH as we are discussing, so I just want to what you can say, I just want to tell you that when we are discussing about this storage of the storage area, so my point is we should not forget about the temperature mapping of the area. So the temperature mapping should be done for a storage facility, and then we have to identify the hotspot or worst spot where more fluctuations are there. That type of location we have to identify. Many people are following only the hotspot. Means what? Hotspot means where you are identifying a hot zone. But in addition to that, this is logic. It's correct. I agree with that hot zone. But as per WHO requirement, the area where there is a possibility of more fluctuations. This is what I am not telling. Again, I am telling you. This is the guideline requirements. It is recommended that temperature monitors be located in the areas that are most likely to show fluctuations. So where the areas where the more likely fluctuations are there you have to do the you have to select for the area for the temperature mapping, and whatever of course the equipments you are using or sensors you are using, they should be calibrated as per their SOP and as per their intervals. The point is, only you should not focus on the hotspot, but you should focus on the where the temperatures are likely to fluctuate. That you have to focus, and whatever the temperature monitoring you are doing, that data should be available for review. And when you are checking it, that all record with respect to temperature and RH should be recorded, and that record should be retained. As per WHO, all temperature RH monitoring record should be kept at least for the shelf life of the stored product or material plus 1 year, or as per the national legislation, whatever. So as per WHO guideline, the environment monitoring data should be stored for material or product shelf life plus 1 year, or as required by the national legislation. In some companies, the storage, I have seen the retention of this record is up to the raw material retention. Suppose retention record is like that key, the last lot is used in the product, in the finished product, so that finished product shelf life plus 1 year, that way they use it. Or in some companies they put irrationally like 7 years or 10 years. So it depends on company to company, but this is the WHO requirement, so I just put here to make you aware about this requirement. Okay, now let us understand about the damaged containers. Already we discussed the damaged containers while receipt. You remember the point? While receipt of the damaged container we discuss, and if while receipt, then you can put it separately, maybe in the quarantine or maybe under hold, or you may return back to the vendor or supplier. That's okay, fine. But what about the container damage during your operations or uh, during the routine of use? Because this is interesting question, many times auditor will ask. Suppose in the raw material warehouse there are a lot of containers are there. Some containers may get, maybe some damage. Some container may be some pressed or maybe some damage. Auditor will ask that container, let me see the metal receipt. So metal receipt will be pakka, correct? So that indicates that what during receipt material was perfect. Then the second question of the auditor, how this metal got damaged? And then the third question is, if the container is damaged, where is the deviation or incident, that why it is damaged, when it is damaged, who has damaged, how it is damaged. So are you following the QMS for that or not? That is what the interested questions normally the auditor will ask. So whenever there are the damaged containers, so they should not be issued unless and until they are ensured that it is not impacting on the product quality. So if the container is damaged, so you have to investigate as per your quality management system, maybe deviation or incidents, and then check it whether the material intact or the inner polybag or material is exposed to the atmosphere, that you have to evaluate, and then you have to take the decision. But the point is very clear that if the material is damaged and if there is not mentioned in the your material receipt checklist, then remember that uh, it is damaged in your warehouse, so you have to take care of that. So auditor will ask any quality notification with respect to that material. And of course that time I again put the rejected material. Now again this is the rejected material requirement, because the point is during storage there may be possibility that the material is sampled, material is stored in the warehouse, there is a material is sampled and it is rejected by quality control unit, that it is not compliant to the specification. So it should be stored separately so that it should not be used for manufacturing or further operations. So it should be restricted for further use. This is the requirement. So that is the reason I just put the storage rejected material requirement again and again. And same thing again here, the requirement is that the material or any product should be always kept in a quarantine unless and until it is approved for release or any rejection is done. So it should be kept in separately either in a quarantine or any other area, and when it is released, so it should be used for further manufacturing or distribution. And if it is rejected, then it should follow its procedure for a rejection. But this is what the requirement about the storage, that the material should be protected from the unauthorized use. So after authorization only it should be released or it should be rejected. Hope you got my point. And of course the rejected material should be either destroyed or it should be returned to the supplier, or you should have the specific area called rejected area. So in that you have to store it separately, so that by mistake also the material should not be used for further manufacturing operation. This is what the expectation. So that is the reason I am just touching upon this point with respect to the storage of the material when the material is rejected. And again there is a emphasis on the material with respect to the coding. So as per the requirement, there should be a material should be identified as a quarantine, approved or rejected. In many companies the requirements are uh, quarantine, under test, approved and rejected. But as per the guideline, quarantine, approved or rejected, you can have distinctive code, and according to that the material should be stored. So you can see that the indications are there. That way you can store as whether the material is quarantine or whether material is approved or whether the material is rejected. This is the storage requirement as per the FDA. I understand ki, about 1 hour is over, but please, my sincere request to you, please be patient, because there's only some last 10-15 minutes are there. So please bear with me. Physical. This is very important. Huh? This point I really like, always like. Physical or other equivalent validated segregation should be provided for the storage of rejected, expired, recalled, or written materials or product. So the point is, material should be segregated or separated physically or the equivalent validated method. For example, you can put some barcode. So that does not mean that material will not be physically separated. Again, I am telling you, physical segregation is required if you are using the manual label or you are using the barcode label, because identification there is no any problem. But hope you remember our earlier discussion that the cleaning, if the physical segregation is not there, you will not able to clean it properly. Remember the requirement. So it is mentioned here, physical or other equivalent validated segregation should be provided for the storage of rejected, expired, recalled, or whatever material. The point is, if you are using the barcode label or automated or electronic procedure, it doesn't mean that you can you need not required to be stored in a segregated manner. No, you have to store the material in well segregation manner only. Okay, only you can have this barcode label, or you can say the electronic label, so that you can have the more traceability. That is what the thing. It is mentioned here, but the point is, if you not comply, if you comply this, if you think that okay, I will not maintain the physical segregation because I am using the uh, electronic segregation, electronic barcoding I am using, but then the container will not able to clean properly, and you will get likely to get the observation with respect to that requirement. Hope you are getting my point, because I am not just explaining the training with respect to the requirement, but I am just making you aware that how you should understand the requirement with respect to the good warehouse practices. And this is very big topic, so I make it in a two parts basically. Okay, so now let us discuss about the material stock. So material stocking should be stored in such a way that their quality is maintained, and stock should be appropriately rotated, so that what happen, you should rotate the stock of the quality, stock of the material. So stock of the material, you can rotate it so that all the materials can be used. And for example, the very simple example for stock rotation is the first in first out, or first expiry first out. So that way you can take it, so that the stock will get on rotating. And you have to follow this formula as per your SOP, either first in first out, FIFO, or first expiry first out. And if you want to deviate it, sometime what happen, you have to take the multiple lots for some studies and all, and if you have to deviate it, then it should be through the deviation. But that should not be a practice. It should be a temporary and for specific study or for specific purpose. That's it. It should not be practice. That is the reason it is a temporary. Okay, so please understand the meaning of this. It should not be a practice when you are deviating the first in first out deviation. Normally what happened, this is happening, even this is applicable for dispatch also. Okay, finished product dispatches. So please remember that if you are deviating, you should have the deviation. And of course, periodic stock reconciliation should be performed. Periodic stock reconciliation should be performed, that what is the actual stock, physical stock, and what is the recorded stock, whether they are matching or not. And if there is a significant discrepancy, so you should investigate it. You should check the possibility of any inherent mix up or any some wrong issuance, and all you have to check it. So the point is, when you should have the SOP for stock checking. and you should have the record, or you should have the limit that how much percentage is acceptable with respect to the physical stock and with respect to the record stock. And if it is out of that limit, you should immediately investigate. And because the point is, if there is a considerable less quantity in actual stock, that indicates that that material might have gone to somewhere else. Either the raw material is gone to given is put to some other raw material finished product manufacturing, we don't know. Wrongly it is gone to the finished product. So that way there is a risk of a mix up, inadvertent mix up. So better way, you need to just evaluate the point, or it may be an incorrect issuance. So please remember that you should have the SOP for stock checking of the materials, and that should be periodically checked with respect to the actual stock, physical stock, and the recorded stock. Okay, so many people think that stock checking is actually it's a part of the commercial activity, but no, the stock checking is under the GMP requirement, and that is the reason it should be followed as per the GMP. Okay, so it is not only the commercial requirement, this is the GMP requirement. And when you are regularly checking the stock, so it is not only on the yearly basis, you should have some periodic basis, maybe either quarterly basis or a half yearly basis. And if you found any obsolete or outdated or expired materials and all, you should be kept it separate immediately, so that it should not be used further. So the stock checking purpose is, there are two basic specific purposes. One specific purpose is if there is a variation between, or a variation between the physical stock and the recorded stock, then there is a big risk. There may be possibility that some mix up or maybe some extra issuance may be there. Or when you are second benefit is second benefit of stock checking is, if there is any obsolete material or expired or outdated material, you can immediately keep it separate. So that is what the benefit of the stock checking, and you have to follow that stock checking. Okay, and it is a, again I am telling, it is a GMP activity, but I have seen in many companies that the record for stock checkings are not, periodic stock checkings are not available. You're getting my point, what I meant to say? Now let us start our discussion with respect to the packaging material. Hardly now last I think 5 to 10 minutes are there, 5 minutes maybe, so please bear with me. I am trying to speak something fast so that you will understand. If you are not understanding, you can go back and again you can learn this topic, no problem. You can just go back and again learn the same topic, don't worry about that. So about packaging materials, so the packaging material should be selected such that they should not be reactive, additive, or absorptive to the drug product. Means whatever the packaging material I am selecting for packing of my drug product, the packing material selected should be such as that it should not react with my drug product, or it should not add any chemical to my drug product, or it should not be absorptive, means it should not absorb any drug product. So that what happened? The drug product will not be impacted with respect to its safety, identity, strength, quality, or purity. You're getting my point? So this is the rationale, what type of, or this is, you can say, the requirement of what type of packaging material you should choose for packaging of your drug product. So this is the requirement of 21 CFR. And the next requirement with respect to the packaging material is, whatever the container closure systems we are selecting, they should protect the product from contamination or deterioration, and also from the environmental factors. Already this point we have discussed, but as is the part of packaging components or packaging material, I touch upon this point that it should be able to protect from the contamination and from the external environmental conditions. Whenever the drug product containers and closures are used, whenever we are using the container and closure, means what? Whenever we are using any packaging materials, they should be clean, and if required, they should be sterilized. So whenever we are using any packaging material, they should be clean and sterilize. So point is, second point you understood that yes, it should be sterilized, because if it is injectable, there is a requirement of pyrogen, and also you should follow the sterilization and pyrogen, depyrogenation and all. I agree with that. But the point is, if it is the OSD product, maybe some aluminum foil and all, it should be clean. So the question is, do you have the SOP of cleaning of your packaging material before use? If not, you are not complying this 21 CFR requirement. And of course, in case of injectable, if you are using following any depyrogenation process, that cycle should be validated. Hope you got my point, what I meant to tell you here. Because in OSD I have seen that this is lacking. So when you are dealing with the packaging component, check its quantity, identity, and conforming to the packaging instructions. Any outdated or expired should be destroyed, and there should be disposal record. Now, why I am discussing this is because there is always the point that packaging components are received in a big large quantities. So when they are received, their quantity and identity should be checked, and also whether they are suitable for as per the packaging instructions or not. So you should have either a provision for inspecting the 100% checking of the printed components, either manual or automated, no problem, but 100% checks should be there to reduce, or you can say to avoid the errors. Because if the wrong labeling, then it will directly lead to the recall. It's very very clear. And if you are issuing or transporting any packaging components, or moving from one department to another, then it should be in a locked and caged trolley. And this is what the point it is specified here. Special attention to safe and secure storage of the primary packaging components, specifically the printed packaging components also, because printed packaging components, so we should take it very very carefully. So they should be stored in the lock and key, and if they are even transferred from warehouse to the production, they should be transferred in a cage trolley, and ensure that they are complying with the specification, and also follow the correct labeling for all the materials, so that there should not be any confusion with respect to the use of any packaging components. And when you are doing the sampling of these packaging components, specifically cartons or labels, follow specific you can say the statistical tool for sampling, so that you will able to get the statistical evaluation of the quality of the receipt of the packaging components, and you will able to identify the specific defects. Okay, this is what I want to discuss to you today with respect to the good warehouse practices at the session 1. And further, I just want to share with you that you know this is the YouTube membership program. You can just go through this Hitendra Kumar Shah and you can join, and there are 3 YouTube memberships: GMP, CGMP and Advanced GMP. You can select to get the more and more benefits with respect to the seminar and free doubt clearing sessions. So there are different facilities are there. You can make the use of that. You can pay to YouTube directly and you will get that benefit. So this is what I just want to share with you. And finally, uh, I just want to tell you that the next week we will have the good warehouse practices training on the session 2. A second session we will discuss. And before leaving ahead, now I will write your all the query answers to your all the queries. I will revert to your all the answers in your to your queries in the chat box. So whatever I have received your all questions, now I will revert your questions. So please refer all the chat box, so that you will get the answer through the chat box. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can reach to me, and even you can subscribe this YouTube channel, so that you will get notifications of the new videos. One point I want to tell you here, that the people who are having the members are enrolled in the membership program. So please hit the bell icon. If you hit the bell icon, then what happen, if I put any GMP update, then you will get a notification. Otherwise what happen, you will not get a notification and you will think that why you are not getting the GMP update. So please hit the bell notification icon so that you will get the notification. Further, under this YouTube channel there are a lot of learning videos. You can go through this training. Thank you so much. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your questions, and now I will revert your all questions in the chat box. So please bear with me. I will revert your all questions one by one so that all questions can be clarified and our training can be complete now. Okay, thank you so much, and ensure all time compliance. Thank you.